Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah.
And your background and your experience at MIT, and as you mentioned at the early blockchain, I think you're involved in a few startups and even education.
Yeah. So I'm Kenny. I'm one of the co-founders of Manta Network. It's a project that we've been building for the past 5 years. We have 40 people all around the world. And I was pretty envious of the TokenPost office because I wish that we could have an office as well. But we work really cohesively as a team despite being globally distributed. Manta is mostly known as the largest modular L2. It's our most famous product. But being in this space for 5 years, we have many other offerings and services as well. A little bit about myself. Prior to starting Manta, I was finishing up my MBA at MIT, which is where I was also the teaching assistant for the former SEC chairman, Gary Gensler.
Oh, wow.
So I was helping him with teaching the crypto courses over at MIT.
Okay.
And so, and prior to that, I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first technology company in the cloud computing space back in 2011. And I saw this transformation of cloud computing from something being not taken seriously to now where people or businesses all over the world don't launch without some cloud infrastructure. So it's very interesting to see that transformation and again witness that transformation in blockchain, especially around cryptocurrency, and now as we're seeing institutional adoption of Bitcoin. And then after the cloud computing company, I also worked on a healthcare AI company. This was back around 2018. And that service was specifically to build AI models that could predict disease earlier and more accurately than human doctors. And so I learned a lot about AI and data modeling and stuff around that. So that was a very interesting experience as well. And so it's really interesting again to see now, especially with blockchain, a lot of that industry intersect between blockchain and AI.
How does that experiences sort of shape your vision, you think, for privacy and I think modularity in Web3 that you described?
I think there are two different problems here.
Okay.
One is privacy, one is modularity. And when Manta first started, we were focused purely on privacy. Since then, we've expanded a lot, and now our main focus is on user adoption, and because the space is still so small. But when we were focused on privacy, I think that on-chain activity, when you think about just the current state of blockchain, yeah, sure, public ledgers and all that stuff, it's fine. But when you try to scale it out to 8 billion people and everything's fully transparent, then it can become a very big problem.
Right.
And so we think that, privacy is one of the fundamental problems that need to be solved for public ledgers in order to carry out that mass adoption. On the modularity side, we also believe that from the philosophy of user acquisition and adoption, you can't be thinking about just building everything in one singular place. At the end of the day, you have to be flexible. You have to go where the users are. And so you have to have infrastructure that's also flexible and adaptable in doing that. And so modularity is a methodological practice that we very much adhere to make sure that we can continue to adapt and we can continue to penetrate new ecosystems to find these users.
Someone new to Manta, how do you explain your mission to build this modular as a privacy-preserving blockchain ecosystem? For someone new to the Manta.
Yeah, so I do want to clarify, the privacy preservation is not really our focus.
Okay.
Our focus is primarily around user adoption.
Okay.
And I think the user adoption for that, modularity is extremely critical.
Okay.
Because it's the difference between, well, I guess not the difference, but it's essentially how technologies are built in any other industry, right? So if I wanted to build an application like Neighbor, right? You don't build everything by yourself from the ground up. You use existing tools. You have hardware supplied by Intel, you have software supplied by Linux or Windows, Microsoft, Oracle, right? And so these are all components that you use to build what you're trying to build. And so when it comes to modular blockchains, it's the same way. In the past, people, teams, projects have built everything from the ground up by themselves.
In-house.
Yeah. And the problem with that is that the space continues to evolve, the industry continues to shift, and people's demands, what brings value, continues to change too. That's why when you saw, back in 2013 with all the Bitcoin forks, all of them basically died out except Bitcoin.
Yes.
They weren't able to adapt. They weren't able to change. And then we saw in around 2016 all the forks of Ethereum and all the competitors to Ethereum, they also basically all died out.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to change. They weren't able to adapt. Now, in 2020, when Manta came into the scene, we started off building a fully on-chain privacy-preserving L1.
Yes.
That was on Polkadot. And, that was interesting as an experiment. And I think we built a lot of the foundational innovation for ZK through that people still use today, which is really amazing. But there was no product market fit. And so by about 2022, right, the question now became, can Manta pivot, or will Manta fall short just like all the other projects in the past? And so we as a team were able to make that pivot into becoming the largest L2 we see today. And so the question is, do you want to continue down this path like previous blockchains, or are you able to adapt? And so we've learned through our experience that adaptation is critical to continue to stay and build in this space, and that adaptation comes with modularity.
So going back a little bit, on September 23, you had the project called Manta Pacific.
Yes.
I think it was a huge success, I believe, at the time. I think it became the third largest Ethereum L2 within months. How was that? What do you think was the reason for those growth, and did you expect it? I think the TVL jumped to almost over 400 million across over 180 dApps. So tell us a bit of experience with that. Yeah,
that's a really good question, because it really reflects the state of the market for L2s back then versus how it is now. So back then, like you mentioned, we were one of the top 3 L2s, but that's also because there were only probably like 4 or 5 L2s in existence. Right? There was Arbitrum, there was Optimism, there was us, there was Polygon, and I don't know of any others back then, right? And so our product differentiation from Manta Pacific was specifically the modularity, and we worked very closely with Celestia for that. And that modularity was extremely powerful because, the gas fees on Manta Pacific as an L2 using modular DA were probably 1/10 or 1 to 1/100th of the gas fees on any other chain. And that was really beautiful, because then even when our network was congested, the fees were still extremely low. And so one example that I love to give is, I don't know if you guys caught sort of the trend of inscriptions. So like that started in the Bitcoin ecosystem and started making its way to Ethereum L2s. And so in Ethereum L2s, during that inscription wave, you saw different L2s stop producing blocks because there was way too much traffic happening, and the throughput just wasn't enough. When the inscriptions came onto Manta, we never stopped producing blocks because of the modular system that we used for data availability through Celestia. We're able to sustain that throughput. And so not only did our gas fees not increase, our block production was normal and stable. So I think that's a really big hallmark of the innovation that we did at Manta back then, and that's what really differentiated us amongst the other 4 or 5 L2s. Now fast forward to 2025, we're one of like 1,000 L2s. and many other L2s have taken on the technological innovation that we've done at Manta, because everything's open source and we share all of our innovation as well. And I think that's extremely important in the Web3 space. But what that also means is that now the technology for L2s are extremely commoditized. Everything's extremely similar. And so the question is, how do you compete as an L2 in this space? And I think the answer to that question is no longer about just simply technology. It's starting to be about use cases. And that's where we want to start exploring.
And you mentioned about the user adoptions.
The user adoption back then was extremely high because we were one of 5. Right? Now, definitely it's been diluted amongst other L2s as well.
Maybe we can explain about maybe risks of working with too many partners or modularity. What if a service like Celestia stops, for example, how does the multi-DA mitigate this?
When you're starting to work with additional services, it's very different in terms of how you think about your security and how you think about your uptime.
Yeah.
And we experienced this because when we built the L1, we were building it all by ourselves. And so we were purely concentrated on our own security. But when you start using partners, you definitely have to consider what if they go down, just like you asked, right? And so our strategy is extremely different in that case, right? Because our focus needs to be how do we maintain our network uptime if anything else goes down. And so one of the practices that we started implementing is multi-DA, which allows us to have this fallback, right? In case Celestia has some issue with block production themselves, then that doesn't halt our entire network. It's like in the traditional world when AWS goes down and all of a sudden you can't access your apps.
Yes.
So for us, right, like we needed to think about all these sort of fallback strategies. So we do have those in place, and in fact, Celestia even has some by default. And so if Celestia stops producing blocks, then it falls back to Ethereum. And so we can continue. We can find that continuity by Celestia as well as some of the implementations we've done.
Manta introduced a new paradigm campaign a little while back. It was the first yield-bearing L2 platform.
Yeah.
How did you design the mechanics like depositing ETH, USDC, receiving yield-bearing derivatives, and what lessons sort of emerged from there?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting experiment for us that I think became a case study for the industry for quite a while, and I think a lot of subsequent projects that were launching their mainnet followed a lot of the same patterns that we basically created through New Paradigm. The yield bearing was primarily in the form of Manta tokens as well, right? Because this was sort of the incentive structure that we had to attract as much liquidity to the network as possible and boost up that initial launch for Manta Pacific. I think overall it was an extremely successful campaign. I think at the peak it was around 2 billion in TVL.
Yeah, 2.4.
And so you know this better than I do.
The research.
It's a great job as a reporter. So during that time, right, 2.4 billion in TVL alongside hundreds of thousands of daily active users. And from there, I think it really started helping us think and focus on what sort of incentives, what sort of use cases, and what sort of structures that we can put in place to really focus and prioritize user adoption. I think one of the things that we learned subsequently, or we thought we learned subsequently, was that we could provide and incentivize that user adoption directly through the infrastructure layer, which is why we purely focused on Manta Pacific as the scalable L2. But now what we're learning is that infrastructure layer itself is not enough. You have to have the interesting applications. You have to have the interesting use cases. So that's why we're pivoting towards that direction and starting to drive those use cases home ourselves.
So I think talking about some use cases, January 2025, early this year, you partnered with Symbiotic to offer fast finality, sort of eliminating the few days challenge period for optimistic rollup withdrawals. How do you think this restaking mechanism works, and what benefit does it bring to the CD5 or cross-chain products in general?
Yeah, so the primary reason why we did this with Symbiotic was because of the sort of user experience issue that was one of the symptoms of many different sort of security assumptions within Manta Pacific. And so by partnering with Symbiotic, not only were we able to strengthen our L2 security, but we're also able to provide a better user experience for the end user. And on top of all that, now Manta through Symbiotic will have native staking. And so we're going to be introducing that native staking on Manta Pacific in October. And that time, that native staking will come with a lot of different incentives linked to the applications and use cases that we're also going to be pushing out.
Users can cross-chain their Manta to Ethereum to participate in the Symbiotic staking and earn points.
Right, and that'll also help us with our liquidity on Ethereum, which is the base chain that Manta Pacific exists on.
Do you think other L2s might adopt similar staking models?
I wouldn't be surprised. I think Manta, We've been very much at the forefront of a lot of innovation that I think subsequently many other projects have kind of taken as case studies for themselves. And so I think, we've been willing to take the risk as early adopters for a lot of these technologies, but once we prove that it works, right, we do see others behaving in the same pattern.
Just last month, in August 2025, you loaned about 7.5 million Manta tokens to market maker Wintermute to enhance liquidity. How does it work, and how do you see such agreement support your token stability or market depth?
Yeah, so the partnership with Wintermute was definitely one that was strategic for our future direction for Manta.
Okay.
Wintermute since then has been a great partner, not just on the token liquidity side, but also in terms of strategic relationships and helping us with opening doors to a lot of future partners to collaborate with. The token loan specifically is for Wintermute for their own sort of market making purposes. This is a loan that will be returned back to Manta at the end of the contract. But I can't get too much into detail because of a lot of NDAs in place.
Sure.
But what I can say is that it definitely does help liquidity because now we have a very strong professional service out in the market that's helping support the liquidity of the token through this arrangement.
You're in Korea right now for Korea Blockchain Week. Share us your experience here and whether you're talking to maybe different companies or gaming studios or policymakers. What are you doing right now for Manta in Korea and generally in Asia?
Yeah, so specifically within Korea, right? Like, definitely meeting with people in person is always better than doing a Zoom call and being able to see amazing.
Yes,
is great. On top of that, Manta, I think we were one of the probably earliest projects in the L2 space to really start pushing Korean projects. And so one of the earliest projects that we had on Manta that we grew with New Paradigm was actually a lending protocol. And the team was is based in Korea. And so, I think we've always had sort of that strong root in terms of the ecosystem partners. And as a result, right, like we did see sort of that interest from the Korean community as well. One of the things that I wanted to get accomplished here is to, at least this year, was to figure out, for this next chapter of Manta, as we continue to focus on the application and use case side, what kind of partners locally can we find to help us with driving adoption? Because I think some of these use cases that we're building out will be very interesting for the Korean community.
Can you share an example or a use case?
Sure. So one example is more so on the DeFi side. So this is a project that we've been incubating for the past 6 to 8 months now. We'll have much more details released about it soon, but basically it's already launched on mainnet. We haven't audited the contract, so we've been testing with our own money, our own liquidity, and so far the APY is around 70 to 110% on Ethereum with a market neutral strategy. So I know it sounds crazy, and I would love to get into the details of how it works, and I can probably tell you more later.
When the camera's off.
But it's extremely interesting because it's market neutral, meaning that it doesn't matter what the price of Ethereum is. What does matter is the volatility of Ethereum. And so I can say that we're exploiting volatility in order to market that profitability rather than the token price itself. And I think it's the first of its kind in the market. And it's extremely easy for users because you don't have to really do anything. The APY is generated just as you would stake an Ethereum token onto Ethereum mainnet.
I must ask about how do you navigate especially Asia, the regulatory scenes, and because as the industry gets more regulated, you have to obviously abide by them to offer products. How do you overcome them? What are things that you're doing to work with local companies or financial companies to make this available to the local users or investors?
Yeah, so that's a very relevant question at this time because prior to Korea, I was in Japan, and then I was also in Hong Kong and Indonesia and Vietnam, and I think probably like 2 or 3 other places in the past 2 2 months.
Wow.
But one trend that's emerging from all of these parts of Asia is that sort of regulatory adoption,
Sure.
which means that there's a lot more clarity, which on the good side means that there's certain rules that you can follow in order to make sure that you're compliant. But on the bad side is that every country has its own rules.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, so like it's, I think Korea traditionally has been, a country that has kept its crypto ecosystem extremely insular.
Yes.
And so now it's thinking about how does it expand to attract more of that global liquidity. In Southeast Asia, you see the opposite. There's been a lot of global projects coming to extract liquidity out of Southeast Asia. And so now Southeast Asia is saying, how can we promote crypto adoption in a way that doesn't extract value from our country? So it's very interesting, these sort of differences in dynamics and how they're thinking. And I think ultimately the policies will be reflective of those dynamics.
Interesting.
I'm not a lawyer, and even if I was, I can't be a lawyer for every single country. And so, we can't entirely rely on ourselves. And so we very much value the relationships that we're building with local partners in these regions to help us with navigating those legal risks.
Looking forward, what milestones can we expect over maybe the next 6 to 12 months? Say, will there be a new viral cross-chain apps? Or, as you said, some yield bearing product? Any further yield enhancements, or can you share a little bit?
Yeah, so whether or not these apps go viral is not up to me, so I can't tell you now whether they'll be viral or not. But I will say that I think they're very interesting. Like I mentioned before, for Manta, we've realized that the end user adoption is not going to come from just building the best infrastructure, because infrastructure has become commodity. And so we need to focus a lot on how to do that user acquisition ourselves, which is all in the use cases and the applications that we build out. We have some internal apps that we've been incubating that we believe are going to be extremely exciting for the ecosystem. Some for native users and some for new users outside of Web3, because we want to tackle both. And so the DeFi product that I was telling you about, right? This is something that we're building for months now with extremely brilliant people. I can't give you the exact names on camera right now, but I could probably tell you offline. But these are very talented people who are extremely experienced in the industry on the trading side, on the development side, and so we're combining all that power to bring this product to market. So it's something that I'm very confident in, and I think that people will really see this as a revolutionary new DeFi product. We have others on the consumer product side as well, some catered more towards degens. One which we are internally calling Junk Fun is a really fun sort of degen tool as we refer to it as a meme recycler.
Meme recycler.
So the way that it works is, you have millions of these wallet addresses right now with lots of meme coins in them that are worthless.
Yes.
And so
are you recycling them?
Exactly.
Wow, interesting.
We allow people to bring those meme coins into Junk Fund and recycle them for chances at winning bigger prizes.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
so
take your worthless meme coins and do something fun with them.
Just like you recycle plastics.
Exactly.
Wow.
We're cleaning up the space. We're like environmentalists.
For the digital space. That's interesting. Okay. So
and then we're also doing applications that we think aren't necessarily extremely trendy in crypto itself, but can reach a very massive end user audience. And so one of the bets that we're taking right now as well is with an application called Super Fortune. And so that actually takes advantage of a lot of the metaphysical market. So thinking about feng shui, thinking about astrology, each of these multi-billion-dollar markets.
Yeah, the Korean is big on that actually. Every morning they open up the app and they're like, oh, it's my fortune today. Should I go out? I don't. I'm a Christian, so I don't do that. But I feel inclined I
didn't realize how big of a market it was. But, it's huge all over Asia. And so we see a very large intersection of that audience with potential crypto. And so we're willing to take a bet on bringing those users into crypto through this metaphysical adoption.
Do you have some last words to our Korean audience at TokenPost through TokenPost? Anything exciting that we should look forward to in Manta while you're here, or at least in the next month or two?
Yeah, so I mean, in the next month or two, I think we're going to be releasing a lot of these products.
Cool.
So there's a lot of those things to look forward to and try out. And there'll be a lot more detail that we're releasing with these products in terms of the people that we're working with, the partners that we have. And I think, what I've told you is still just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm extremely excited about that. As Manta itself, I think we have a more philosophical message, right? Which is, we've been around for 5 years now. And, in those 5 years, we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen a lot of market shifts. But one thing that has stayed consistent is, we continue to build, we continue to adapt. And as a team, we continue to push that mission of adoption over at Manta. And so that has never failed. And so I'm extremely confident in myself and the team and in our partners to help continue to drive that for years to come.